Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Avorion episode 29. I'm Enigmius, and today we're continuing with the Samson builds. Last episode we were doing kind of cosmetic, kind of structural work on the top side, and now we're going to be working on the underside. Similar goal, different approach. So the top side we did sort of like a big armored slab with integrity field generators in it, and it's got potential. It's not done yet. There's a lot of smaller details that I want to add to it. The underside, I decided, would definitely benefit from some additional dimension so that the ship looks a little less flat than it currently does, but we can approach it in a slightly different way. And in this case, I thought I would do it in the form of like a couple of smaller nacelles on the underside. We've got the cylinders on the sides of the ship that are basically mirroring the same concept that's working through the central hull, but we don't necessarily have to use that same shape on kind of an outrigger or a nacelle, or even you might even think of it as like a pontoon kind of structure, but definitely room for more integrity field generators. I've realized now that it may not be realistic to cover the entire ship with integrity fields, but we'll get most of it, and that should be enough. So we've got these structures that are basically long, narrow, slender, kind of a little bit squat pontoons or nacelles or whatever going on the underside. And outside of those, there's really not much that I could think of that I wanted to do on a kind of larger scale when it comes to the cosmetic stuff. Like I said, there's all kinds of room for little things that we'll be adding on the top and the bottom, but this particular structure was fairly straightforward, and it was so straightforward, in fact, that it went in very, very quickly. And then I was trying to figure out what I could do to maybe embellish a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and come up with something a little bit more advanced than what I had originally put into place. Sometimes things work out, sometimes they don't. I kind of like the way that it's looking now. It doesn't really draw a lot of attention to itself. If you were to be able to, you know, position yourself wherever you wanted in the video around the ship, the pieces that I'm putting on now are pretty low profile, and they don't necessarily demand a lot of attention. You can see there a bit of a glimpse at it. It serves the purpose of giving us that little extra dimension, kind of breaks up the flat underside, as well as maybe even a little bit better than the big slab that we put on the top. And now it's just a matter of sort of looking at it and kind of saying that was quick and easy, maybe a little too quick, maybe a little too easy, but it's getting there. And what can we do in order to just kind of improve upon such a basic thing? And I decided one thing that we could do was add another sort of dimension on the underside as well. So an irregular sort of profile. Instead of having fairly simple, fairly straightforward, we would just add kind of like a long bump on the underside of each of these pieces, and use that to kind of add a little bit of additional visual interest to the structure, a little bit more mass. Not mass talking in terms of things that we want to add to make the ship turn slower, but mass in the sense that it kind of fills it out a little bit because it was sort of a nondescript sort of shape. And now you can see these blocks that I'm putting on the side. They're for the purpose of lining up what was supposed to be sort of like a rim around this front section, and I wanted to see if I couldn't do something a little bit different on the front end instead of having just another taper the way we do on the back side of the same piece here. It turned out to be geometrically impossible to lay out that whole idea, that rim sort of thing, and have it line up with the profile that we've got on the front end. It's sort of, you know, almost like a hexagonal shape that's been squished. Trying to think. Yeah, I'm trying to think of how many sides are on a hexagon to make sure that I'm describing it accurately, and I think I got it. It's 6 sides, and it's just been squished. And that's, I mean, you can, it's serviceable. There's different things that you could do with that, but it wasn't the kind of thing that I was looking for. So I started working on this little rim around the edge, and you can see a lot of fiddling with different sizes and different shapes of blocks, trying to make it fit. And the main thing that was causing all of this fiddling was the fact that I couldn't get it to line up with that profile. It was just a little bit off on one block that we placed, and then you place the next one. Now it's off by twice as much, and you place the next one, and now it's off by 3 times as much as the first one, and it grows. That little offset grows and grows until you get to the end of the line, and it's almost going off the rails, so to speak. It's no longer even contained on the profile of the shape that we are trying to place it on because of that little offset. And it was one of those offsets that we don't have the granularity to correct. It's just a little bit too small. I don't even know for sure exactly how that sort of offset ends up being created, but it does from time to time. And I'm learning, albeit slowly, that when it does happen, when we do encounter that kind of a situation, to just either look at it and decide if I can accept it or move on and stop trying to fiddle for 20 minutes to fix something that we know now we can't fix. And in this case, you can see I decided to remove that little rim and replace it with some larger blocks, more straightforward kinds of shapes to finish it off. And it's a little bit more blunt now on the front end, and I'm okay with that. So it's got a longer taper off the back. Altogether, the one thing that was kind of the question in my mind in terms of whether or not I would be happy with this or not was the fact that it does have more of an angular sort of look than even I was prepared for when I started putting it there. We've deliberately gone out of our way in parts of the ship to place things that look angular, but I wasn't 100% convinced that I wanted it here. And in the end, I decided that it would be fine. It's not really worth busting my own balls over trying to figure it out and sort it out when we've already decided that there are certain angular sections on the ship that are there by design. So then another detail, another layer that I decided to add on to the underside was this little piece here, and it's just like a little thin strip that kind of extends down and away from the main structure and then runs along for a while, and then it reconnects on the other end. Very simple, very straightforward. There's nothing complicated or difficult about it. And then we put a little bit more on the bottom just to kind of accentuate that curve, soften the curve a little bit. Details. We're at the point now where we're starting to transition between the larger structural details, adding things that I feel the ship needs, and the smaller details that we're adding just for the sake of looks. And this is sort of in between. It's a little bit larger than a small detail, I would say, but it's purely cosmetic. And then just to reinforce the cosmetic nature of this piece, I decided to put some of the glowing blocks, very, very narrow, like very, very flat up against the structure, but following along the entire sort of outside edge on both sides, the left and the right, the port and the starboard, so to speak, just for the sake of having it there. We're going to leave it for a little while, like I do with a lot of different things, see how I think about it in a day or two. If I don't like it, it's quick and easy to remove. If I do like it, then we've kind of made a little bit of progress in a direction that I wasn't planning on working on necessarily at this particular point. You can see with the integrity field selected, we get that view of the pieces that are covered and the pieces that are not. And then I switched to the view that lets me see only the different blocks that I selected. In this case, we've got only the armor blocks, but not any of the armor slopes or anything like that, just the blocks. We can set it up so that we can see only certain kinds of equipment blocks, like integrity fields, etc. I really like that feature, just so that we can sort of see after the fact how everything came together without all of the other blocks in the way. And I noticed when we were starting to look at that central section on the underside that once again we were still kind of missing some key details with the integrity field. So we put some more on the back end of the slab that we placed last episode, and now we're going to finish off with this central piece. And instead of having it on sort of an outrigger or on like a structural extension, it's just going to be attached directly to the underside of the ship. It's going to be almost as if the ship is pregnant and it's got a big bump on the underside. is where we're going with this piece here. And it's strictly, it was 90% to make room, a little bit more room where we needed it for the integrity field generators. But also, as I was kind of coming up with the idea, I realized that it could actually really help the appearance of the ship as well, just by doing something that was a little bit unexpected. The main challenge with this is because, or it comes from the fact that we have this block. It's got curves and it's kind of rounded around the edges, and it's, you know, it's not a simple, straightforward, just one or two blocks in place. Like, we're spending a little bit of time doing some detailing on it, and we've now got to try and make this merge with the existing hull in a way that I'm happy with. And I decided this is one of those rare cases where I'm going to deliberately take advantage of the fact that we can overlap blocks in order to produce a specific profile or a specific look. Only because it's at this point, it's the only way to make it happen and have everything come together. If I don't take advantage of that, the ability to overlap certain things, it's just not going to work the way that I want it to. The reason why I try and avoid doing that as part of the ongoing sort of build process is because it tends, I've found in the past there's been other games that allow you to kind of overlap things, different shapes and different pre-made constructions and things like that I've played, and the ability to overlap blocks sometimes creates a certain sloppiness in the way that I see what I'm doing, but I'm justifying it as it's just a part of the build mode, so why not do it? I'm not creating this expectation for other people that they're doing something wrong if they do it. I'm just saying that for me, if I do it, I don't like the outcome. I don't like the way that I feel about the process. So I try to keep it to a minimum. And when I do give myself a little bit of wiggle room to kind of take advantage of the fact that I can overlap blocks to a certain extent, it's very conscious and it's a very deliberate choice. It's not something that I just do because I can. And in this case, it works out. It allows us to merge this block with the rest of the structure of the ship in a way that I'm happy with. And ultimately, the amount of overlapping in this particular section was pretty consistent. I mean, we're pretty much overlapping everything at this point to at least some degree. But relative to the rest of the ship and what we've done, there's very, very little overlapping and kind of fudging and getting things to fit where they technically, by the laws of physics, might not. Depends on a person's particular point of view. So you get the idea. We've got this big bump now on the underside of the ship, and we're just kind of finishing things off. We're getting ready to get a brief glimpse at what kind of coverage we have with the integrity fields. And so the next episode is all going to be about little details that we're going to be adding around various different points of the ship. Again, specifically to add visual interest, specifically to add just little things that kind of, when you look at it, you think, that's more than a person might have expected to find on a ship of this style and a game of this nature. So that's where we're headed. So if you want to be notified about the next episode, the easiest way to do that is to subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Links for social media are always in the information section below the video. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.